update on our work at the Rock Art Ranch Field School and the Multikiva Site. The Rock Art Ranch Field School at the University of Arizona and the School of Anthropology and Arizona State Museum was in the field for 5 weeks this summer, from early June to early July. The field school is in part supported by NSF, our U program, and that also involved bringing half of the 17 students involved in that field school back to Tucson for about 2 additional weeks of work in the lab at ASM. The program is under the overall direction of Chuck Adams, and I'm the associate director. Our staff for this summer included 3 graduate students, 2 from the U of A and 1 from the University of Illinois Chicago, and my 3 volunteer crew chiefs at the Multikiva Site. Many of the students, interestingly, this year were freshmen or sophomores. They came from all over the country. It's kind of a younger crew this year. The Rock Art Ranch Field School is hosted on our private ranch southeast of Winslow, as many of you know about. It's owned by the Baird family and is called the Rock Art Ranch because of the spectacular panels of late archaic and basket maker rock art in nearby Chevelon Canyon. We began our work on the ranch in 2011 and really got started out there with the idea of learning about the frontier or boundary area between late prehistoric, and it's P4, AD 1300 stuff, the late settlement clusters like Hammurabi, where we'd worked for many decades, and the Zuni area to the southeast. The field school activities focus on 2 critical areas for training students, survey and excavation, with a little bit of lab work thrown in. We began our survey west of the ranch, first in the area of Chimney Canyon, moving eventually this year more over toward Bell Cow Canyon, and with hopes of eventually getting over to Chevelon Canyon. From our very first season of survey in 2011, we got a big surprise. We were not going to be finding a lot of P4 material like genital yellowware, pottery, and sites. Instead, we had to learn the vocabulary of early point types, things like Cortaro, San Pedro, Pinto, and gypsum. We have stumbled into an area that was heavily used by middle and late archaic groups, basket maker 1 if you like, taking advantage of the upland dune areas ultimately for the beginnings of agriculture, and otherwise taking advantage of the diverse plant and animal resources available in the canyons. We're just 20 miles from Hammurabi, where the focus of the later populations was on settlement and farming along the Little Colorado River. These groups were clearly using the landscape in different ways. The early groups were not interested in the river. The later groups were not interested in areas not on the river. This summer we surveyed only a relatively small area, a little over 200 acres, but recorded 45 sites in loci, GPS'd 1,100 isolates, and collected a sample of artifacts from most of the sites. Most of the sites in loci are pre-ceramic sites, so the principal artifacts we are collecting are flaked and ground stone, including over 50 of those nasty projectile points. We again did some testing in ashy features that we hope are associated with the pre-ceramic components and not just cowboy campfires from the last century, in order to get material for radiocarbon dates. The excavation component of the field school was run by me this summer, again out of the Multikiva Site, which is located on some state land south of the ranch. With a name like that, you would expect we would be awash in kivas, but we still have yet to actually find one. The site consists of a compact room block, a stone masonry pueblo, a very formal, large trash mound, miscellaneous rock features, a grinding slick, and a bunch of ash stains. There are also 3 noticeable depressions near the pueblo, probably what the recorders first thought were the kivas at the site. The site has occupations that range from basket maker 3, as early as about 500 AD, into the early to middle 1200s, Pueblo 3 stuff. The pueblo itself dates to the P3, and the ceramic assemblage is dominated by walnut black and white. So it seems to date from the mid-1100s into the early 1200s. This summer we also went back to 2 of the depressions and tested in the 3rd. The largest is over 20 meters in diameter. Great kiva, anyone? But it's still a mystery. There is no trash, no fill, no wind or water lane deposits, but we finally found a feature in the bottom. Remember, it's 20 meters across at the top, and in the bottom, a little bit off center, was a 3 to 4 meter diameter rock ring, a distinctively rough sandstone, a little less than 1 meter deep, 3/4 courses of masonry on the top, no noticeable floor deposits, and it goes right down to the bedrock. It is remarkably sterile for being right in the middle of the site and right next to the trash mound, less than 5 meters away. Recently, we've come to learn of some similar kinds of sterile large depressions near some Pueblo sites, primarily in the Rio Grande area. But if you know about anything like that, let me know. The second depression we returned to is the smallest. We found the corner of a little pit house. It dates to the P3. It's kind of square, rectangular, with slightly rounded corners, and it also has a floor that's right down on the bedrock. The third depression was perhaps the best bet for the kiva. It's only about 10 meters in diameter and had a lot of rock with a ring around the outer edge, but it turned out to be quite shallow. It was burned with a lot of really fine ash, and we exposed enough of it to learn that it was circular. The rock around the outside edge, unfortunately, is not really good masonry rock. It's just kind of clumpy things, so we're not really sure what the color around the pit house is all about. Another kind of mystery. Thank goodness we went back to the Multikiva site this summer. Last year we had tested around the Pueblo and done a little wall chasing, and we're confidently talking about a potentially 30 to 40 room Pueblo with a number of 2-story rooms. How wrong we were. This year, while attempting to define how large the rooms in the Pueblo are, we began a more serious wall chasing project, almost as an afterthought, and thanks to a volunteer that I could actually task to wall chasing for about 2 weeks out there. After some slightly confusing concentrations and orientations of wall fall caused us to pause one day in the wall chasing, after pondering it a bit, we realized that we were looking at some massive wall fall instead of rooms. Wall fall from a compound wall that's probably about 2 meters tall around 2 sides of the Pueblo. There are 2 courses wide, and that helps explain why some of the wall fall looked weird as it does. When it falls to one side, it makes a really big rubble mound because it's a big wall. And because it's 2 courses wide, sometimes it unzips down the middle and goes both directions. So it sort of looks like wall fall from 2 different walls. Instead of 30 to 40 rooms, we now believe that there are half that, 20 to 24 rooms. Some of that depends on how many of the rooms are actually 2 stories high, and we're now thinking maybe only 3 or 4 of the rooms up in one corner. The rooms are also very large, approaching 3x4 or 4x4 meters. Looking around the landscape, it kind of makes you wonder where they got all the beams for that, because everything's juniper trees that are not really very big. With the revelation of the large rooms in the compound, the memory kicked in of a site just like this that George Gummerman and Museum of Northern Arizona excavated in the mid-60s in the Hopi Buttes area about 40 miles north of us, called the Plaza Site. The layout of the site is similar, the double walls are the same, the large rooms are the same, and even more interesting, the ceramic assemblages are the same. There's a featuring of kind of walnut black on white and shono black on red. But the Plaza site only has 6 rooms. We also know of similar sites in the Chevelon Buttes area, or near Chevelon Pueblo, and the Cresswell site, which is an archaeological conservancy property kind of within the Walby State Park, is a good candidate for being a very similar site. When Gummerman wrote up his material in the 1960s, he was talking about a lot of similar sites maybe up in the Glen Canyon and Kayenta area, but it's something we need to pursue. However, the Plaza site actually identified several kivas, something that is so far missing at the Multikiva site. This was the last season planned at the Multikiva site for the immediate future. The NSF funding is in place for 2 additional seasons at Rock Art Ranch, so stay tuned. Maybe someone can return to the Multikiva site someday. There are a lot of questions about the site that inquiring minds would like to know the answers for, and maybe you'll hear some of those someday at a future Pecos conference. Thank you.